What are we going to do?
Catch some fish. Striped bass love Lake Texoma. We went fishing with Jake from Barefoot Guide Service to find out why and try our luck at some winter fishing. Lake Texoma is a big lake that spans across the Oklahoma and Texas border. It's home to lots of fishing and water sports. The number one thing Texoma is known for. The striper love it. Which means fishermen love it, too. Before we go any further, you need to know 3 quick things. 1, I am not a fishing expert. Hey, I'm just 8 years old, but I am an expert on having fun. I'm also becoming really good at learning adventures, which is why I share them on YouTube. 2, I do want to improve my fishing skills, and understanding more about fish behaviors and biology will help me do that. So while we will talk about some awesome techniques we learned, this video is mainly about the fish itself. 3, you're going to hear us mention Barefoot Guide Service and Slik Baits. They didn't sponsor us for this video. We paid Jake's regular trip rate. And while we did take home 3 of the special flukes that Slik Baits made for the trip, we offset that by making a special donation. It's an awesome charity that is dear to Slik Baits and Jake. And I think you will love hearing about it. More on that later. Both of them went out of their way to make this an extra special trip. So we do owe them a huge thanks. All of the good things we say about them are sincere and not a paid promotion. So with that foundation laid, let's talk striped bass.
Sometimes just called striper, these silvery fish have 7 or 8 horizontal dark stripes from their gills to their tail. They can live up to 30 years, and it's not unusual for them to get as big as 5 feet long and 77 pounds.
I won't be that big for a year or 2.
They are primarily found in the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico off the coast of North America. They live in the saltwater and swim upriver to spawn. Fish born in freshwater streams that migrate to the ocean to live and then return upstream to breed are called andromynous. As larvae, they eat plankton. As juvenile, they eat insect and fish larvae. As adults, they eat other fish, crabs, and squid.
Adult stripers have a few predators: sharks, seals, and me. Okay, maybe a few other people help catch 27 million pounds of them each year. They can be tricky to identify. We asked several anglers what kind of fish this is. Some said a striper. Some said a hybrid. Some even said white bass. What do you think it is? Drop your answer in the comments below. How did the striper get here?
Built in 1944, Lake Texoma is landlocked. Although the water from it flows down the Red River, into the Mississippi River and Gulf of Mexico, dams along the way would make the journey impossible. Not to mention, stripers usually travel less than 100 miles upriver to spawn.
So the original striped bass in Texoma didn't get there naturally. They were stocked.
That story began in 1941 in South Carolina on the Santee Cooper Lakes. When that dam closed off the spawning routes of striper, the spawning run was already underway. Biologists just assumed those striper would die.
A few years later, they discovered they were wrong. Much to the anglers' delight, stripers were thriving and reproducing in those lakes and rivers that feed them.
In the mid-1950s, Arkansas biologists began stocking 2 of their lakes with striper. Following that success, several other states followed their lead.
The Oklahoma Department of Wildlife first stocked Texoma with striper in 1965. By the mid-1970s, stocking striper in Texoma stopped because the population had become self-sustaining.
Less than a dozen landlocked lakes can boast of a self-sustaining striper population, and perhaps none of them more successful than Lake Texoma.
It's actually better than self-sustaining. It is thriving. It is estimated that between 850,000 and 1 million striper are harvested from Lake Texoma each year. Let's talk about why Texoma is so special. First of all, it's big, really big. By surface area, it's Oklahoma's second largest lake and the 40th largest lake in the U.S.
It covers 139 square miles and has 600 miles of shoreline. At its deepest, it's 142 feet. That is lots of room for stripers to roam and grow. The variation in depths also allows them to seek ideal water temperature and oxygenation throughout the year.
But before they can grow, they have to be born, and that brings us to point number 2. Successful spawning means long, strong currents. Let my dad explain.
White bass lay eggs that sink and stick to the bottom, where the males fertilize them and they stay until they hatch. That gives more options for successful spawning places. Striped bass are different. They release their eggs, between 500,000 and 3 million of them, near the surface, where the males fertilize them. They start out 1/25 of an inch in size. In the water, they swell 4 times larger than their original size. That makes them almost the same density as the surrounding water, and they are buoyant in a moving current. If they are not in a good current, they sink to the bottom and die due to lack of oxygen. The eggs need between 48 and 72 hours to hatch. That is why the current flow must be sustained over a long distance. Lake Texoma and its 2 main inflows, the Ouachita and the Red River, provide these ideal conditions of good long currents to support the eggs through to hatching.
That brings us to the third reason. Striper can survive in freshwater or saltwater, but in nature they live most of their lives in the salty waters of the ocean.
Lake Texoma is not anywhere near as salty as the ocean, but the Ouachita and the Red River that feed it have high salinity, especially the Red River, as its upstream flow near Wichita Falls passes over large salt deposits. The higher salinity in the Red River means it's not suitable for providing drinkable water even when treated, but the striper love it. The somewhat brackish water in Texoma is favorable to their growth and has potential to aid the spawn as well. The salinity can keep the eggs from hardening and might even aid buoyancy.
And another reason, Texoma's diverse habitat isn't just good for the striper themselves, it's good for the bait fish that the striper feed on.
Healthy and massive populations of gizzard shad and threadfin shad are primary food sources for the stripers.
Let's try to catch some. We've been steadily getting better at catching trout, so we decided it was time to add a new fish into the mix. My dad put out a call to the Texoma guides looking for someone to tailor a trip for us, and we got matched up with Jake from the Barefoot Guide Service.
Jake called me ahead of the trip and asked a lot of questions to make sure he could make the day a special one. I told him we weren't looking for a huge slab of fish, and we didn't just want to catch fish. We wanted to know why we were catching the fish.
Dad also told him we wanted to have fun. We wanted to learn about striper and that I might talk his ear off. Jake did a great job planning a trip for us and managed to keep both his ears through it all.
Jake even called up his friend, Jonathan Britt, at Slik Baits, and the two of them met up to make some special lures for our trip. These flukes are embedded with autism puzzle pieces. Slik Baits has used them before in their supportive cast for kids. More on that special program later.
Prepped, planned, and layered for the cold, we set out in search of striper. As we rode away from the marina, Jake explained that striper put a lot of weight on over the winter. It makes up for the weight they lost in the hot part of the summer and gets them ready for spawn.
Spawning is a busy time, and feeding might be light on crowded rivers. Plus, the journey can be as much as 80 miles upriver, so the striper instinctually know to put weight on in preparation.
The striper are looking for easy meals and don't want to expend a lot of energy chasing food, and the cold water has them moving slower. That is the perfect setup for a fishing tactic called dead sticking.
Dead sticking involves presenting artificial bait in a way that imitates stunned or dead shad. The cold water affects the shad too, and stunned or dead shad make for an easy winter meal for a striper. The lure we use to imitate a stunned shad is a fluke rigged on a jig head.
There are a few tricks to making it work. First, we use the fish finder to mark the natural channels in the lake that provide structure for the striper. We then let our lures drop to the bottom, then reeled it up to the depth of the fish. Then we let the boat drift very slowly. Too fast and the lure won't appear natural or will be moving too fast for the striper to want to chase.
To slow down the drift, we used a drift sock. On windy days, Jake says sometimes he has to use 2 or 3 drift socks. Then we turned on a thumper to attract more fish. You can hear the thumper working in this clip. It mimics the vibrations that occur when fish are feeding, so nearby fish are attracted to it.
It's kind of like when I hear Dad opening a bag of Oreos. Those vibrations get my attention.
Now that we have a lure in the water and are slowly drifting it past the fish, we hold our rod still and wait to feel a bite. The bite is really light. They don't strike the lure hard. It's more like they gently slurp it into their mouths. If you don't set the hook right away, they will spit the lure out.
The bite is so light that my dad missed a lot of them. And I'll be honest, sitting and holding a rod patiently for extended periods of time is not my strong suit.
And sometimes you find some stacked up fish, but they just aren't biting.
But all of a sudden, I got hooked up with one. My dad didn't record it because he and Jake helped me land it. And look which of the lures landed it. The special one Jake made at Slik Baits.
I should note here, all the baits we used were Slik Baits, not just the pink autism ones. But we got a kick out of the special one catching the first fish.
He's a little heavy, so you see how I got my fingers in here like that? You can kind of take him, hold him just like that, all right? He may flop a little bit, so try and hold his mouth down. Got him?
Look at there, buddy.
When a spot got slow or the fish weren't biting, we would move to another area.
Now is a good time for us to point out a couple of things. I wanted to be sure to mention that Jake's boat is a blue wave boat, made in Oklahoma. It's the smoothest running boat I've ever ridden in.
I loved it so much, I put learning about them on my list of future adventures.
Next, I want to thank Jake for the all-around awesome time we had even apart from the fishing. I know fishing with kids can be a challenge, and sometimes autism scares people.
Jake was patient, funny, a good teacher, and gave me lots of encouragement. He treated me like I was a VIP client, and there was no question I had fun because we hung out all day. He was even late to his own Super Bowl party for me. I've been lucky enough to go fishing on a handful of guided trips, and they all have been fun, but Jake really made this day special. Okay, back to the fish.
See this red track here? That's what we need to follow. So you're going to go right just a little bit, okay? Keep going.
Striper fight a lot harder than the trout I have been used to catching. So Dad was too busy helping me most of the time to film while we were bringing in fish.
No, you're good. You got it. It's all right. I'll hold the weight. You just reel. There you go. There he is right there.
Okay, here he is. Get him up. Get him up.
Well, go over there where you see your fish.
Okay, one second.
There.
Right there, just like that.
There you go, dude. Now hold him tight.
Gotta squeeze it. You hold him up.
Hold him up. Show him to me. That one will name Fred.
Once, Jake reeled in a fish for me while I was the net man. So Dad recorded that, or at least he was supposed to, but he didn't hit the record button. It's a shame, too, because I am an awesome net man. But he did get some pictures of me and my fish, and a picture with my new friend, Jake.
The trip was a great success. We learned about striper, we had a lot of fun, and we even took home enough fish for several meals.
I'm thankful for the opportunities I get to enjoy fishing, which brings us to the last thing we wanted to mention in this video.
We wanted to tell you a little bit more about Cast for Kids. That organization helps provide fishing opportunities for kids with special needs. Go to their website and look at those kids' smiles, and I think it'll tell you more than I can with words. We made a special donation to the Slik Baits campaign for Cast for Kids to say thanks for the flukes we took home. Jake from Barefoot Guide Service and Jonathan from Slik Baits actually met through their volunteer service for Cast for Kids. I think that tells you a ton about their hearts and what kind of people they are, too.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Jonathan, not only for making my day special, but for helping so many other kids, too. And thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and adding a comment. It helps my channel grow and will help you follow more of my future learning adventures. See you next time!